welcome to our extraordinary full council. Today, Friday, the 9th of April. This will be a virtual meeting with remote attendance by councillors and remote access press and public, and will be held in accordance with the provisions of the local authority and police and crime panels, coronavirus, flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales Regulations 2020. I'd like to welcome everybody this morning, including the press. And I would first of all like to ask Stephen Taylor, our monitoring officer, to do a roll call, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll call the names in the order on the agenda. Councillor Dean.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Present.
Thank you. Chairman, present. Councillor Legg.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Roger.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Present.
Councillor Lady Barclay. I think we've received apologies, have we not?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Dorian Smith.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Grottick.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Mumford.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Nellams.
Present.
And thank you. And Councillor Sims.
Present.
Thank you. On the one, apologies, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I think Lady Barclay was hoping to join by telephone, so she may join. Yes. Thank you. I would just like to remind members, please, to mute your phone or your computer, please, as far as the meeting goes, unless you are speaking. Thank you. And for our voting procedure on this vote, we will do as before, and I will take votes against or abstentions, and if there's no signal, then I will take that as a vote for. Thank you. The first item on our agenda today are declarations of interest. Do I have any, please? No, thank you. As far as Chairman's announcements are concerned, I have no announcement to make other than to remind members that the pre-election period has started as the notice of election has been published. So I would be grateful if members could kindly respect this and not use this meeting to promote themselves and their undoubted qualities. Thank you. So we move on to...
Chairman, can I just come in? I probably, whether I need to declare an interest or not, I am driving Folgers taxis for the airport, so I will declare. I just thought I'd mention it in case.
That's okay, Councillor Guy. That's noted. Thank you.
But you are not going to withdraw from the meeting, are you?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll move on to item 2 on our agenda, which is the Levelling Up Fund, and it is the report of Paul Masters, our Chief Executive. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Firstly, thank you, Chairman, for allowing this extraordinary council meeting to go ahead. A very exciting and very challenging time ahead of us, and one that we wanted to grab as expeditiously as possible and bring to the earliest attention of full council and the community. This relates to a new fund that was announced in the budget by the Chancellor at the beginning of March for £4.8 billion to be made available up until 2025 for areas of capital grant. The country, during that announcement, was put into 3 priority areas, with priority areas 1 being the top area, and the Isles of Scilly was put into priority area number 1, which is a fantastic opportunity for us. The Levelling Up Fund covers 3 areas. of capital investment. The first area is for high street and town centre regeneration projects. The second is for arts, culture, which also can include sport. Those areas can have grants of up to £20 million. And the third area is transport and transport infrastructure, which can receive grants of up to £50 million. Areas can put in bids as they wish, but obviously priority area ones will be given some level of priority. Bids for the first round, and there will be subsequent rounds, have to be in by midday on the 18th of June this year, for work on the project to formally commence before the end of March 22. As I've said already, this is a capital grant, not revenue, it's capital, and there is an expectation from the Treasury that at least 10% of the bid will be match. It can come from the public sector or other partners, but priority scoring will be given where the capital comes from the private sector. This is a competitive process. There is no guarantees here. This is about making a bid for the allocation, but obviously the view of your officers is this is such a fantastic opportunity, we should try and grab it and try and pull out all the stops to hit the 18th of June deadline to get a bid in. In order to prepare the bid, and detailed in the report, the government is making available to Priority 1 areas £125,000 to prepare the bid. So therefore, the first thing the council needs to do, if it wishes to put a bid in, is to agree which area it wishes the bid to be worked up on. We, obviously, as you know, have been working alongside the Transport Board for many years in terms of both an infrastructure and vessel replacement programme, lobbying various government departments and putting in outline business cases in the past. When the Levelling Up Fund was announced, we have been in contact with civil servants in various departments, and I know Derek Thomas, our MP, has also been in contact with ministers, all of who have made it clear that a transport bid from the Scillies would hit the criteria for a bid and it would be welcomed by the government. We are therefore recommending that as a council you authorise us to commence work on such a bid with the idea that we try to hit the 18th of June deadline. If the bid is unsuccessful, there will be subsequent bidding rounds. The reason we wish to go for the 18th, however, is there's no guarantee we would remain as priority 1 and other areas wouldn't be reprioritised. So we have, in effect, a good opportunity to get in there quick. In order to hit that deadline, though, we are suggesting in the report that you have a further extraordinary council meeting on the 10th of June in order that you can sign off the bid, which has to come from the council, and then subsequently has to also be supported by the MP. In the bid, we also have to show broad stakeholder support for what we're putting in, and the bid, which will come to you in June if you agree, will cover an awful lot more detail, such as how the governance would work, the various financial models that would be put forward, the risks to the council, areas such as cash flow arrangements, and where the capital match would come from. And all of that has to follow the Department of Transport rules and be subject to the Treasury Green Book 5 tests. So there is an awful lot of work to do if you wish us to go ahead. And therefore today's report, in effect, asks you to make a decision on three things. The first is that you wish me, alongside our colleagues and stakeholders, to work on a bid in the area of transport and infrastructure. The second is that you give me, in consultation with the chairman, the authority to utilise the £125,000 in bid preparation. And the third is that an extraordinary council meeting is held in June for a detailed bid to come back to you before submission to government on the 18th of June. Just in closing, Chairman, as I said, this basically gives us an amazing opportunity, but also an amazingly difficult challenge to hit all of those criteria by that deadline. You have my guarantee that we will pull out all the stops to try and do so, but we mustn't kid ourselves in thinking this isn't an incredibly tall order. The good news is, though, that in terms of transport and transport alone of the three areas, the government have said that because of the complexity of transport bids, they would accept on the 18th of June, in effect, bids that are not completely finished, and further work can continue during the summer on them. So, in effect, outline bids as opposed to detailed bids. We will do everything we can to make it as detailed as possible, because we really want to hit that deadline. And therefore, the report is before you for debate and challenge, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul, for the introduction to the paper. Do I have any questions, please, or comments on this? Councillor Marcus, thank you.
Okay, Preston. Yeah, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer to me. But looking at the business cases attached to the report, on page 85 there's a Gantt diagram about suggested timelines, and it looks like we are compressing what is in fact a year's piece of work into 3 months, which sounds like a tricky and fraught with potential obstacles. So Paul, can you outline to me how we're going to make sure the process is as simple and transparent and inclusive as possible to make sure that we get a consensus of opinions on board, and how we're going to ensure that we can carry everyone along with us?
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. With your agreement, Chairman. This is not starting from scratch, Councillor Marcus. If you do decide to work up a transport bid, you'll be aware that there has been much work done behind the scenes in the areas of transport over the past year, and there has been a flurry of activity when the steamship company itself made contact with the government to seek its own route for funding. So there have already been a number of workshops about particularly options for vessel design. There was a public consultation carried out by the steamship company last summer. There were various stakeholder meetings held over the last 2 or 3 months with key stakeholders about options, types of vessels, what some of the requirements would be in terms of things like speed, stability, freight, climate change, new types of propulsion for vessels, etc. So we're not starting from a blank sheet of paper here. There's been an awful lot of work already done behind the scenes, but you're quite right. We need to come to a clear consensus of the option that we wish to put in the business case. There are a number of meetings being set up in the next week or so with stakeholders and with the Transport Board. And Derek Thomas MP is also intending to carry out his own further consultation with residents, building on the consultation carried out last summer and asking for further input into the views of what our residents think the requirements should be. You're right, though. This is a tall order. I'm not underestimating the scale of the challenge, Councillor Marcus, but as I did say, I still would suggest that it's something we should do our best to try to achieve. And if we get 80% there, as I said, with the transport bids and what the government said, we can work on them all the way through the summer and into the autumn. This is for an announcement to be made by the Chancellor in the autumn statement. So if bids are successful, they would be announced in November. So we do have, the summer to carry on working on it if there are still things to tidy up, which is what I'm expecting. I hope that helps, Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Yeah, I agree with what Paul's just said. There's been masses of work done on this, and in a way I think this is quite refreshing, really, because all our ducks are lined up in a row now. We've just got to shoot them all down. I suppose this is as close to whitewater rafting as the council ever gets, but I think it's actually brilliant that this has happened at such an opportune moment. And the other thing, it's really good that we've got to do it quickly. I can see our issues with it because it's something that needed to be done urgently, but urgently can sort of drift away with the council sometimes in, I hesitate to say waffle, but you know what I mean. So I think this is great. This is really focusing. Start again. focusing on what we need to be doing, and I would very happily propose the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, does the bid allow for the potential for 3 ships potentially? Are we talking a passenger ship, a freight ship, and an inter-island vessel, depending on the choices made? My second question is, if we're being totally frank, some of the decisions made by transport providers in the last few years haven't necessarily stood the test of time, and that's when there hasn't been as much pressure on to make a decision. So are we confident that given the very tight time frame we've got to make a decision, that the decision will be robust and will stand the test of time? And thirdly, will the bid provide any leverage for us as the local authority as a sort of major facilitator of external funding to have medium to long-term input into how the new assets are used and managed?
Thank you.
If that's right, Chairman, I'll answer.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. The definition of the bid, when you read the guidance, is for transport or infrastructure. It doesn't define how many or how much. It just says, up to a maximum of £50 million. So whether it's a single vessel, whether it's multiple vessels, the short answer to your question is yes, it could be more than one vessel, and also for the infrastructure on both sides, of the ports. In terms of the history, I wouldn't like to comment on that. But in terms of if this is agreed by government, then the governance that will go with it, and the project management that will be required, and the reporting that will be required to government will be very onerous, and will make sure that public funds are utilised properly, and all risk is covered. In terms of your last point, I think that is an important one that perhaps members might wish to reflect on, and the public might. Yes, this is not a straight grant to a private sector operator. This is, in effect, a public sector intervention and support, and in response, therefore, there needs to be shown public benefit. That public benefit is obviously in terms of improved transport offer, but could also cover areas such as apprenticeships. It could cover areas such as community assistance. It could be looking at fares. There's all sorts of things, and there would have to be public sector influence on the operation, but not responsible for the operation. In terms of the bid that would come forward to you in June, those governance models would have to be explored. It could be an equity share, it could be a joint venture, it could be seats on the board. All those options need to be explored with the government, and there's no decisions on any of that yet. But we would have to show public sector influence rather than pure control. I hope that helps, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I may I make 2 comments? Stating the obvious, transport underpins all we do, and it's so important both for residents and the visitor economy that I would imagine we would have broad support from the community as well as from within this body to move this project to the top of, if you like, the wish list. However, my second comment would be just in passing and to ask the Chief Exec, the other major project that we're discussing at the moment, and which is obviously dear to all our hearts, is another museum/cultural centre. And I wonder if you might quickly give us any indication of other funding avenues that might be available for this project if we choose to go with the transport project for this particular intervention fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grottick. This fund, as I said, has got 3 areas to it, one of which would fit with the Museum and Cultural Centre, but as I said, would have to commence work by March of next year. As I said earlier in my introduction, however, there are going to be further opportunities for the Council to submit subsequent bids to the Levelling Up Fund, and therefore there's no reason why in further announcements, if we're ready, that we could put forward that as a subsequent bid. The government have made very clear that if you're successful in one bidding regime, it does not preclude you from bidding in others. So this is about prioritising our workload and putting a recommendation before you because of the work that's already been done and the pressing need, but it doesn't preclude us of putting in subsequent bids. Councillor Grotting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Dorian Smith, please.
Hello. Sorry, I was having trouble with the muting.
That's okay.
Thank you very much. I support everything that our Chief Executive has said in his briefing paper and just now. The main area of concern I have is the partly linked to timetable and partly linked to process. The Transport Board, I know, have proposed to have a sort of working party subgroup which includes stakeholders. The thing that's going to be critical in my view is to make this work is to have, when Paul was just telling us about the various options for the financial structure of a successful bid in terms of who operates the ships and who has an oversight and what conditions are attached and what role the council plays, all that is going to need to be worked out really rather quickly, and particularly it's going to need to involve the stakeholders and primarily, of course, the steamship company, because they've done a huge amount of work on the consultation, the ship designs, and they basically have a plan. And I'm not quite clear on this process that we're looking at today, is how and when they can be given the opportunity to state the conditions on which they think it may be made to work. Because there are a number of options which Paul mentioned in passing, such as joint venture, shared equity, not council ownership, I'm pleased to say. That's not necessarily going to be a good thing. The question is, at what point do we try and choose that option for the ownership of the marine assets? Equally, if, say, there were changes needed at Penzance Harbour, as has been discussed regarding the green sheds for freight and so on, would the match fund come from Cornwall Council or would it come from the steamship company as part of the package? So in a way, my main concern is that we have a mechanism to very quickly respond to the needs for what, in essence, is going to be the practical outcome. Okay, if we're fortunate enough to make this bid work, a lot of input required from many people and very quickly. However, we don't want to find that the whole train is rolling down the wrong siding, as it were. We need a very regular interval to be able to check that whatever we're doing is going to be a satisfactory outcome. And we don't want to get lost in the labyrinth of DFT funding because circular methods, basically, in my opinion and experience, don't tend to go very far, except round in circles. So we need to be very clear, saying, okay, we're beggars, we're asking, however, we're not asking for something that simply doesn't work from a financial operator point of view or imposes higher costs on the travelling public on whom we rely to keep our economy going. So if the package is wrong and if it's not balanced, and fares have to go up to pay for, as it were, corporates or government interference, inverted commas, then of course we're not really achieving what we need to do, which is a high quality but affordable marine link. So we have to be, and so I think my question for Paul is, how do we overcome this? I know we've had some correspondence in the last couple of days. How do we ensure that the consultants preparing this bid are given clear guidance on a regular basis and obviously before June the 10th, because we can't have a situation on June the 10th of a case being presented to which we find that the operator, potentially the operator, simply says, no, we can't live with it. It can't work. And this is what happened, if you remember, with the route partnership 20 years ago, where all sorts of convoluted solutions were produced. And the steamship company said, well, I'm sorry, but we can't afford to do it that way. So, Paul, I don't know. I know that you're fully aware of the issue. I just wondered if you could explain to me how you think it might work.
Thank you, Councillor. Today's report is basically just agreeing that I can commence work on this bid in the area of transport, which I come back to as again. The points you're making, though, are well made, in that alongside that, very quickly there would have to be and already being set up is a project approach to getting to the 18th of June. In the report, it points out that I've been able to secure access to specialist support from Cornwall Council, who have got expertise in Department of Transport bid writing, but we'll also need to keep stakeholders regularly informed and engaged. I think we should also not forget, I think I did say quite clearly in my introduction, that the Treasury's expectation is there's at least 10% private sector match, and therefore working with the steamship company or others, but obviously expecting it to be the former, because of the work we've done so far, there has to be a complete buy-in and partnership approach to make bids successful, because certainly I wouldn't be advising that this council would be able to find that level of match funding for a project of up to £50 million, and we would have a lower score anyway. So to answer your question, there are a number of meetings already being set up with either subgroups of the Transport Board or the Transport Board itself, which is tabled for next Friday, and I will need to be putting in effect, weekly updates, both informally and formally, with members and stakeholders, to make sure, as you say, that we don't design something at the end that nobody agrees with. That would be an absolute disaster. But what I've seen so far, and as I said earlier to one of the councillors' questions, is we mustn't forget all the work and all the debates that already have been going on over the last year, as long as I've been with this council. So as I see it, it's refining the ask and coming to an agreement on the ask, as opposed to starting from scratch. But yes, there will be a project management approach that has to be in place. And in terms of the case coming to you in June, that very clearly has to cover all of those financial modelling arrangements and governing model arrangements. Otherwise, we won't be able to submit it, and therefore we'd have to clarify all of that during May. So it's a very tight timetable. There does need to be stakeholder engagement. We do need to show that as part of the bid, otherwise it won't be successful either. So to answer your question, I will be putting in a weekly, probably twice weekly, project management approach all the way through to the end of May to hit that deadline.
Thank you for that answer, that, Chairman.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful to hear that, Paul, because clearly it is absolutely key to it all, and obviously I'm up to speed with the Transport Board, and I know that the Transport Board is going to be on the case as well. It's just that I thought it might have slipped through the net in terms of everybody's awareness. Could I ask one more question, Chairman? Let us say, for example, that there's £40 million required for ships, and the potential grant benefit could be as much as £50 million. How do we decide on the projects within the islands or Penzance that fill that 10 million gap, if you like? Because we're really, really short. I mean, lots of work, as you say, has been done on shipping, not so much on island infrastructure or Penzance infrastructure. So we'd be up against it in a big way. And who do we apply to if we want new inter-island boats or whatever it may be?
I think, as I said in the introduction, Councillor, this is, as you say, it's up to a maximum of £50 million. You don't have to go for the full 50 million, but there's no reason why you shouldn't go for the 50 million either. And it's not just for vessels. It can include infrastructure at both ends. Your earlier question about Penzance, for example, is I'm already in consultation with Cornwall Council about whether or not they would assist us, either in kind or not, as part of the match for any sort of industrial units that may be available on the mainland, because that match can, as I said, come from public sector as well as private sector, and that doesn't mean just us. So in terms of infrastructure on the islands or infrastructure on the Penzance side, we need to very quickly ask everybody's views on that. It needs to have the same criteria, however, though. It needs to show value for money. It needs to show social benefit. It needs to link with the overall ethos of what we're bidding for and why that is an improvement to the quality of life of residents and visitors to the islands. So I think very quickly I'm going to have to coordinate conversations with the Duchy, with other landowners, etc., and with the operator about what are the infrastructure requirements that we need, and we're going to have to prioritise them in order to put that bid together. So in short, yes, there can be infrastructure investments, not just vessels, and it can be up to £50 million, and we would be seeking to identify whatever is appropriate to put in that bid.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Clearly, I support the recommendations. It's a once-in-a-generation chance to update our essential transport and infrastructure. One point I would make with my Climate Emergency Working Group chair hat on is that I think we, as a council, need to push quite hard that the propulsion systems in the vessels are as low carbon as possible, examining technologies like hydrogen and electric. I've actually had some informal discussions with the Chief Executive of Steamship Company around this. I know they're looking at this, but I think it would be remiss of us as a council has declared a climate emergency not to push really hard for the solutions to be as low carbon as possible, because this is, as I said, a once-in-a-generation chance, and we are very clear that we need to make net zero 2050 commitments as a nation. So, and I'm absolutely sure that it will tick the boxes for government as well. So I just really want to make that point quite strongly. Thank you.
May I come in on that point just to back up what Councillor Smith has said there, but actually also, Councillor Smith, you'll be heartened to know that in the Chancellor's introduction to the prospectus, he makes very clear that any of the bids being successful would have to address carbon and carbon reduction as well. So it's one of the key criteria that has to be put in the bid.
Thank you.
Councillor Mumford, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Very supportive of the bid and the pressure of timescale recognised by the Chief Executive. What assurance to members that the 125k can deliver? And is there any impact of this that government would be more or less likely to support the health and care integration project? Would the Chief Executive please answer those questions for me?
In terms of the, Councillor Mumford, in terms of the £125,000, as I said, that is been allocated to us purely for writing this bid. We're not allowed to use it for any other purpose. It's to prepare the bid. I will obviously need to be very careful in terms of making sure that we eke out that money as far as we can. But in my early conversations ahead of today, in talking to consultants and colleagues on the mainland, we feel that that is a reasonable budget envelope to produce the bid. So I'm not intending to spend more, but I have got some assurance, and I'll have to do more. And I've talked to the 151 officer about this, in making sure that we get value for money, but also that we utilise the funds fully in order to get as good a bid as we possibly can. In terms of the health and care project, Councillor, the health and care project wouldn't fit within the criteria of this particular fund, and therefore I don't think that it has any impact at all on the other project, which of course we're very hopeful for an announcement about as well. So we're still pushing big time on the health and care integration project, the new expansion to the hospital, etc. We're still pushing that very much with colleagues on the mainland, but this bid would not be the route and wouldn't be applicable for that particular project.
Thank you. Just one more question. This is a major task and will require significant reprioritisation of officer time. Are there business continuity implications over the next few months?
I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges for us as a small council. Councillor, you would imagine in a big unitary, preparing bids, they probably have a team of 50 people, at their beck and call in order to pull this together, which is why early on I had a conversation with the Chief Executive, and the Chairman had a conversation with the leader of Cornwall Council in order that we could access and utilise their resources as well. That's on the basis of us paying for that by using some of the £125. So in effect, we're the decision maker here. I think, in terms of, just for clarity, in terms of any public listening, this is a council bid. It is the Isles of Scilly Council that will put the bid in, and it needs to be having the agreement of our local MP. So this isn't a bid from the private sector. This is a bid from the council, hopefully in partnership with the private sector, which is why the influence in terms of what goes in it will ultimately be coming to you in June.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other? Councillor Dean, please.
Like Councillor Marcus said, it's a no-brainer, and I think it's already been said, but just some reassurance from the Chief Executive, we'll be kept informed through the whole process, and I'm more than happy to second it. I think it's already been proposed that we accept the recommendations, so I'm happy to second them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Absolutely, you know me, and you know my approach to helping work alongside members. There's no surprises here. We can't have something foisted to you in June that you've not been cited on all the way through. We have a number of routes of doing that informally, and I think the point that Councillor Dorian Smith made earlier is we also need those formal routes as well to ensure that the wider stakeholders also have input. It may well be that we don't all agree ultimately, but it would be a disaster if we can't at least have our view and then come to a consensus and then all get behind a single bid. If we are divided, then I think the chances of us getting this bid through would be very low. So, yes, I'm sure there will be some disagreements and some people have different views, but ultimately we need to come to a consensus within the next 2 or 3 weeks, really, in order for that bid to be put together during May and come to you in June. But let's not forget, as I said, there's been already a lot of work in the background around this, and a lot of views have already been put forward. So it's not as if we're starting with a blank sheet of paper, but absolutely no surprises, Councillor.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors waiting to come in, please?
I thought.
Thank you very much. Well, in that case, I have a proposer.
Robert, sorry, can I just... I've got my hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I thought it was a legacy.
No, I'm very sharp. I've managed to put it up and down.
Okay.
Please, can I just... picking up one point Paul just made. The question really here in practical terms is the steamship company just another stakeholder in this whole matter, or is it a real partner? And I think as far as the council is concerned, given the amount of work the steamship company's done, and given the amount of work the Transport Board has done based on the steamship work to date, with the strategic outline business case, I have referred earlier to the work that we did for Penzance Heliport ERDF support. We have a huge library, if you like, of information and statistics, which I'm very happy to make available to the bid consultants, simply because it should save them a lot of time. It should save money as well. Diana has got a terrific wealth of knowledge and information, which is both her time and the information, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely available. So I would ask that Paul makes this very clear to the bid preparers in case it can help at all. It may not, but at least it's there as a resource. And I think any working party for the transport group or subgroup, whatever you call it, should treat stakeholders and partners as a resource. But in my own feeling, as we've come down this road a long way, steamship companies should be treated as a full partner in the exercise rather than just another. So anyway, that's my point. But thank you for listening.
Thank you. Paul, do you wish to come back in on that?
No, absolutely. I concur. That's why I think we've set up alongside the MP these meetings of the Transport Board in order that we can be very clear what the view of the Transport Board and those stakeholders is, and the MP himself has to be very clear which option he's going to support. So as I said, whilst it's a council bid, our bid has to have the support of the MP. That's the governance route. The MP, Derek Thomas, has made very clear that he is supportive of us working up a transport bid. So that hurdle, has been crossed. And we've also talked to Cornwall Council Cabinet, and we've got their support to us putting together a transport bid as well. So I think in terms of key stakeholders, we're making good progress. But you're absolutely right, which is why I keep coming back to the 10% match. I would hope in a very short order we come to a position where the partner becomes a formal partner because of the match element of any bid.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any more councillors waiting to come in, please?
There is still a legacy hand from Councillor Sims.
Is that the legacy, Councillor Sims, or are you wanting to come?
Yes, it's very much a legacy hand.
Okay, thank you. So I have a proposal for approval of these recommendations, that you've got 4 of them in front of you, from Councillor Sims, and I have a seconder in Councillor Dean. Are there any councillors against these recommendations, please? No, then I take it that it's passed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. So that concludes. There's no other business today, so that concludes our meeting. And thank you very much indeed for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman.